Welcome back. The public meetings of the 29th ordinary session of the International Bioethics Committee, the joint session of the IBC and the Intergovernmental Bioethics Committee, and the 12th extraordinary session of the World Commission on Ethics of the Scientific Knowledge and Technology will take place at the UNESCO headquarters in Paris, France on the 19th and the 20th of September 22. Now, with more details on this, I'm now joined by Namibia's Deputy Representative at UNESCO, who serves as the chairperson of the International Bioethics Committee, Dr. Immolatrix. Geingos, good morning and welcome.
Good morning. Good morning, Namibia.
Okay, we get to see you again. I think we were just together on Wednesday.
Yes, it's quite an eventful week.
Briefly, how did the conference go?
The conference is going well, very excellently. And we had very interesting and really technically informed conversations around the ethical issues or ethical use of AI in sustainable development for our countries. And we are going to put forward concrete recommendations to our ministers with the hope that this will also be adopted by the SADC Secretariat in order to build synergies between UNESCO's work and the SADC region's efforts to implement some of the concrete recommendations to advance the use of AI in our development agendas.
Okay, we await for those recommendations. Now, talk to us about the mandate of the ordinary session of the International Bioethics Committee.
First of all, I should mention that UNESCO is the only UN or only international organization with the mandate to deal with on ethical issues. And that's a unique and very important mandate that UNESCO has. And UNESCO has several structures through which this mandate is realized. One of them is the most important one because UNESCO is an intergovernmental organization. It's led by member states. Therefore, the Intergovernmental Bioethics Committee is constituted by 36 UNESCO member states that are representatives of governments. That's the one that Namibia is chairing, represented by me, myself, as you have just said. But this Intergovernmental Bioethics Committee is advised by the International Bioethics Committee, which is a independent expert bodies consisting of forerunners and players in the field from a technical perspective. And then the bioethics domain only covers ethics in the life sciences as it relates to medical health sector, because it's bio, life, ethics. So it's the applications of ethics in the life science domain. But we also have ethical issues that emanate, for example, in the environmental domain. Ethical issues that emanate from technologies such as nanotechnologies. For that, UNESCO has a commission, which is the World Commission on Scientific Knowledge and Technologies. It's again an advisory commission that consists of 18 technical experts and scholars in the field that advise and come up with recommendations and guidelines to the UNESCO member states, which are government representatives.
So many entities. I mean, you talked about, obviously, the last committee that you just mentioned, and the IBC, which is a body of independent members. Let's talk about Namibia's role in these various committees and entities.
Namibia, as a UNESCO member state, participated through these committees in one way or another in the past. However, in the last, I should say, 6 years or so, we have been actively involved in these committees by virtue of having physical representatives in Paris. And during the development of the AI recommendation, for example, Namibia served as a rapporteur for the platforms that led to the negotiations of the outcomes of the recommendation, and that was over 2 years basically. And then we also, but at the same time, we also served as a member of the Intergovernmental Bioethics Committee, we were just ordinary members. But at the last General Conference, Namibia was elected, represented through me, to serve as the chair of the Intergovernmental Bioethics Committee. So it's really, it's important to highlight that we have been, over the past few years, very actively engaged in the advancements of the debates and also the development of the instruments. That's how we have carried out our role. And I should also mention that Namibia is the second African country to chair this prestigious international body after Kenya that chaired several years ago.
Okay.
So it's a milestone for us.
So talking about, not only do we have dedicated staff members down on the ground, but we also being part of the process, and obviously it's not by any coincidence that we are hosting actually the sub-regional themes, because we have been from the foreground participating. Now let's talk about the IBC and IGB and Commerce, which is an indispensable ensuring that, you know, contemporary ethics issues are brought about, enabling obviously UNESCO to develop normative and policy initiatives. What would be the focus of this ordinary session?
The IBC and the IGBC and the Commerce.
Yes. So many abbreviations.
Yes, we'll have a joint session in 2 weeks in Paris. The joint session is the first that we are going to be in the actual chairing position after Namibia has been elected last year. So it's really the first of the meetings after new members have been elected on the IGBC, on the IBC, even in Commerce. And the coming together is going to consider few reports. Some draft preliminary reports, but some are going to be launched because they have gone through the process. We have 2 draft preliminary reports, one on the lessons learned from the COVID-19 pandemic from an ethical perspective, and the other one is the report on the principle of solidarity and cooperation. Now, these are draft reports to be presented to the IGBC, UNESCO governmental representatives, to consider what the experts are saying and what they are recommending, and to also have debates around the concrete discussions before we can adopt the reports as instruments that could be used as technical guidelines, or perhaps one of the roles of the IGBC after the recommendations by the Commerce and the IGBC, which are technical advisory bodies, is also to discuss whether we need an international instrument in a specific area. So those are kind of the discussions that we are going to have. The second important agenda item on our agenda this time is that we are going to launch 2 reports. One is on the principle of protecting future generations, and the other one is around the ethical issues emanating from the application of neuroscience, which is really one of the big areas with big potential, but has some kind of ethical concerns that we need to mitigate around in order to make the best use of the technology.
Since you'll be, as we begin to round up our conversation, since you'll be launching this report, what are the preliminary findings or highlights of the report so far?
The report on the protection of future generations, we, the IGBC, discussed last year because the preliminary draft was presented last year. And I should mention that protecting the principle around protection of future generations is the foundation of the principle of sustainable development. Sustainable development, the convergence of environmental management, sustainable use of resources, while protecting our health and genetic integrity of the human species. Now, if you talk about issues around sustainable development, sustainable use, with the background of protecting the future generations, it's a very divisive topic because, number one, we are at different environmental stage globally. Number two, use of resources. To what extent do we define that at international level when we are sovereign states. So those kind of debates were really the
cloning,
highlights.
Issues of cloning and all those things?
Issues of
human cloning?
Issues of cloning are in the domain of the commerce.
Okay.
So they are even right now on their agenda during the joint session. There will be some reports that are addressing issues of cloning, issues of ethical issues around the use of digital technologies, for example, which is outside the domain of health and medical field. So that's the way you can demarcate the mandates of the commerce and the IGBC. So the other report which I want to highlight here is the issue on the neurosciences. When you have to use machines and computers attached to our brains and our nervous systems. Now, there are serious ethical issues around it, but there are huge potential in terms of medical application and diagnosis that we can benefit from these technologies. So the debates were around really how do we mitigate the potential ethical risks around these technologies. For example, issues related to individual rights and privacy, issues related to non-interference, consent. All these ethical issues were deliberated on in the context of neuroscience applications in the health field, but more so with the aim of describing ethical frameworks that will help us mitigate the ethical risk and also take advantage of the technology in an ethically sound manner. So those were basically the highlights of the debates around these reports.
Okay, unfortunately, Doctor, we're out of time, but any concluding remarks before we let you go this morning?
I would just like to acknowledge and appreciate the role of the Namibian government in driving these processes, because even though the fruits of what we are doing now will be difficult to perceive now, as is with technologies, because it's long term, we are really setting the necessary building blocks. Also with the initiative by our President, His Excellency Dr. Hage Geingob, through the establishment of the task team, into which the deliberation of these conferences are really fitting into. So necessary right foundation is being laid. And that is commendable really to our presidency and also to the Namibian government. Hopefully with future implementations, we will see the fruits of what we are putting in place now.
Okay. No, thank you very much for joining us this morning, Doctor.
Thank you very much.
We wish you all the best in terms of the conclusion of the conference that's currently taking place, and all the best for the 19th and the 20th in Paris.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Now, that was Dr. Immolatrix Geingos, who is Namibia's deputy representative deputy permanent representative to UNESCO, who also serves as a chairperson of the International Bioethics Committee, talking to us about the meeting that is scheduled to take place in Paris between the 19th and the 20th of September 2022. Now, do stay tuned. Good Morning Namibia gets to return shortly with another interview.